everyone. Welcome tonight. I'm Dana Alexa. The Trump administration is set to offer a buyout to all federal workers who do not want to return to the office for work. And that's according to Axios on Tuesday, which reports that a forthcoming government-wide email will offer to pay all federal employees who won't commit to in-office work until September 30th, so as long as they resign by February 6th. Axios quoted a senior administration official who said that the policy will ensure federal workers are on board with the president's adherence to higher work standards. Also, President Trump wants to denuclearize North Korea. The White House National Security confirmed on Tuesday, saying President wants to completely denuclearize the Hermit Kingdom. That same day, North Korea's Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un visited a nuclear facility and called for an increase to North Korea's nuclear arsenal. President Trump has signaled that he wants to denuclearize the world, saying he wants to draft an arms control treaty with Russia and China. And like those leaders, Trump believes his friendly relations with Kim will get the two to the negotiating table. President Trump declares that education policy will soon be sent back to the states where it belongs. He took to Truth Social Tuesday, posting a message in support of Tennessee's effort to implement school choice. Tennessee lawmakers are currently seeking to establish a statewide school choice program through the Education Freedom Act of 2025. The governor's universal plan would provide state residents vouchers to use for private school tuition and costs. And the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, held her first briefing, announcing sweeping changes to the briefing room. Here's more.
Good afternoon, everybody. How are we? Good to see all of you.
The youngest press secretary in the country's history kicked off her new gig with a bang.
President Trump is back, and the golden age of America has most definitely begun.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt announced sweeping changes regarding media access to the White House briefing room, opening up the Trump administration to all media outlets, and restoring the press passes of the 440 journalists who lost theirs during the Biden administration.
We're also opening up this briefing room to new media voices who produce news-related content and whose outlet is not already represented by one of the seats in this room.
Leavitt announced that the two seats usually reserved for the staff of the press secretary would become the new media seats, and those individuals would get to ask the first questions.
So in light of these announcements, our first questions for today's briefing will go to these new media members whose outlets, despite being some of the most viewed news websites in the country, have not been given seats in this room. We also, again, encourage anybody in this country, whether you are a TikTok content creator, a blogger, a podcaster, if you are producing legitimate news content, no matter the medium, you will be allowed to apply for press credentials to this White House.
With no binder on site, Leavitt sparred with hostile media members who repeatedly and unsuccessfully tried to pin her down.
Do you view yourself and your role as speaking on, advocating on behalf of the president, or providing the unvarnished truth that is, not to lie, not to obfuscate to the American people?
And I will say it's very easy to speak truth from this podium when you have a president who is implementing policies that are wildly popular with the American people, and that's exactly what this administration is doing.
NBC News has learned that ICE arrested 1,179 undocumented immigrants on Sunday, but nearly half of them, 566 of the migrants, appear to have no prior criminal record besides entering the country illegally. Is the president still focused exclusively, which is a civil crime, it's not criminal?
It's a federal crime.
Only 27 years of age, Leavitt schooled the mainstream media like a seasoned 27-year veteran. And given her track record and performance today, don't expect that to change anytime soon. Daniel Baldwin, One American News, the White House.
President Trump signs an executive order to protect kids under the age of 19 from experimental, chemical, and surgical mutilation. The White House sent a memo Tuesday saying the U.S. will not fund, sponsor, promote, assist, or support the so-called transition of a child from one sex to another. The order will also rigorously enforce all laws that prohibit or limit procedures. President Trump says medical professionals are maiming and sterilizing a growing number of impressionable children across the country under radical and false claims that adults can change a child's sex through irreversible medical intervention. Trump says this dangerous trend will be a stain on America's history. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is set to revoke retired General Mark Milley's security detail and clearance and orders an internal investigation into him. That's according to a Fox News report Tuesday, citing multiple senior administrative officials. Hegseth is reportedly requiring the new IG to conduct a board review of Milley to determine if enough evidence exits to strip him of a star in retirement. The report comes after President Biden issued a preemptive pardon for General Milley as one of his last actions as acting president. The U.S. Senate rejects a bill to sanction people involved with the International Criminal Court following a Democrat filibuster. The Senate rejected the measure in a 54-45 vote Tuesday, failing to secure the 60 votes needed to advance. The bill seeks to sanction the court after they filed arrest warrants against non-party Israeli leadership for prosecuting the war started by Hamas. Republican Senate Majority Leader John Thune said before the vote, the ICC has no jurisdiction over citizens of unaffiliated nations, and the institution harms America's sovereignty.
And while the United States will not be turning over any of our military members to the ICC, the issuance of warrants for U.S. soldiers or military leaders could jeopardize American troops' ability to move freely where needed and impede our ability to defend our country and stand with our allies.
The ICC tried to interfere with American sovereignty in 2020 when they claimed the investigation, quote, war crimes committed by our military. This is despite the fact that the United States is also not a member of the International Court. Well, turning to this, Senate Republicans work overtime to continue undoing the last 4 years of the Biden administration. Here's One America's Nathaniel Manner.
From passing the Laken Riley Act to confirming multiple Trump cabinet nominees, congressional Republicans are hard at work to pass the MAGA agenda. Senate Republican leadership held a press conference on Tuesday to lay out their top priorities for the 119th Congress. At the top of their list was confirming the rest of Trump's cabinet picks, such as Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, and Kash Patel, among others. Senate Majority Leader John Thune said that while Democrats attempt to stonewall the confirmation process, they're working hard to make sure Trump has the people he needs in government.
The other issue, as we all know, on the floor these days is nominations. And as you all know, the Democrats made a big deal and blocked the nomination of John Radcliffe to CIA last week. Ultimately, he ended up getting 74 votes on the floor, and that's going to be the case. I mean, they can block these votes, but these folks, we're going to continue to press on and get them confirmed, and they can do this the hard way or the easy way. If they want to continue to obstruct and delay, we're going to continue to grind and grind and grind, and we'll do that through the weekend if necessary.
Another top issue was Congressman Chip Roy's Illegitimate Court Counteraction Act. The bill sanctions International Criminal Court members over their arrest warrants for Israel's prime minister and defense minister. While the measure passed the House, it failed in the Senate because it didn't reach the 60-vote threshold to pass the filibuster. Democrats claim the bill harms U.S. allies who are members of the court. Nevertheless, Republicans say they will work to protect our ally Israel.
The first objective of a court of justice is to recognize right from wrong. The ICC greatly fell down on that, on what is incumbent upon them. Any entity that would put the leader of Hamas and the leader of Israel in the same bucket and treat them the same doesn't know right from wrong.
Senate leaders then fielded questions about their work with President Trump. Thune was asked about Trump's sudden halt of all foreign and domestic aid for 90 days, according to a memo sent out from the Office of Management and Budget on Monday night. Trump did not say he will terminate spending programs, but is instead reviewing them to see where they can make cuts to the federal budget.
This is a different day in Washington, D.C. The President of the United States wants to do something about inflation. Where does inflation start? It starts at government overspending, and particularly when it's deficit spending. We're going in debt $1 trillion every 100 days. The best way to start going after inflation is to ratchet that back.
Senator Risch said this is part of Trump's plan to investigate these agencies to make sure they aren't spending money on DEI initiatives.
Welcome back. Florida authorities announced the arrest of 2 smugglers transporting 26 Chinese migrants. On Tuesday, Coral Gables police said they received a tip about 2 vans allegedly transporting migrants while carrying firearms. That's when 2 smugglers who are part of Cuban and Puerto Rican descent were detained, along with 26 others. Officials believe they arrived through boats in a canal that leads to a private marina. The Department of Homeland has taken over the investigation so far. It's the 2nd human smuggling operation in Coral Gables, which is Miami, if you're not familiar, this year. All right, Oklahoma's Board of Education approves a measure mandating parents enrolling their children in schools, providing proof of citizenship or lawful permanent residence here in the states. On Tuesday, the state board voted 6-0 to approve the measure. State Superintendent of Public Schools and board member Ryan Walters is slamming corporate media for lying about the issue. He stresses the rule won't prevent anyone from accessing education, adding it's for data collection purposes. All right, 6 states are filing suits to block a White House order freezing federal grants. State attorneys general announced the move Tuesday, arguing it's unconstitutional. The White House says funding review is essential to ensure spending aligns with the executive orders that actually focus on the taxpayer and remove funding for DEI programs. The review does not impact individual benefits like Social Security or Medicare. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says the goal is to be good stewards of public funds and end spending on wokeness. All right, New Orleans officials discuss how they plan to keep people safe during this year's Super Bowl. Here's more details.
Officials in New Orleans hold a press conference discussing ways they can keep people safe during the Super Bowl. On Tuesday, authorities said their security plans will be a collaborative effort with Louisiana State Police and federal officials. It will include patrols in the city's French Quarter, which already has wedge barriers installed which blocks access to Bourbon Street. Officials said they will meet with the local community to present their security plans ahead of the event.
Going to begin publicly rolling out some of the options right now to our community, and tomorrow we are meeting with in the afternoon the business owners in the French Quarter. And during that meeting, we will be making some presentations to the community about options of making the Bourbon Street safer, making the French Quarter safer.
Additionally, they sent a message to football fans telling them to be well behaved during the game, adding the city will not put up with any lawlessness.
In New Orleans, that our crowd control and our management, we're a very tolerant city, but we are not a city that is going to put up with lawlessness. You can be tolerant without being lawless. And so is the intervention. But no, I think both fan bases will be well behaved. How do you like that?
Officials closed off their press conference by expressing confidence in their safety plan, which was created after the New Year's terrorist attack on Bourbon Street.
Have an incredible Super Bowl. We're going to have a great and fun time. And then followed by Mardi Gras. This is a safe city. We've had a tragic event. And we will never forget what happened here, but we know and are confident that our plans are good.
Super Bowl 59 will take place on February 9th, with the Kansas City Chiefs and Philadelphia Eagles set to square off against each other.
Scientists make a shocking discovery following a battery fire in Moss Landing, California. Monday, a research team from San Jose State found heightened levels of toxic heavy metals in a nature reserve just 2 miles away from a lithium battery plant that caught fire. These metals included high concentrations of nickels, manganese, and cobalt. Scientists say this could pose long-term consequences for the environment.
I think we should care about those really sensitive habitats and understand what are the short, medium, and long-term consequences of heavy metals being injected into the ecosystems.
This comes after local officials said no toxins were spilled in the environment following the blaze that burned over 100,000 lithium-ion batteries. Moving on, equipment from Southern California Edison is believed to have started the Eaton fire. Here's One America's Taylor Tinsley.
Bottom line is Edison is saying its equipment did not cause this fire, and they're just flat out wrong.
New lawsuits against Southern California Edison allege the utility company failed to de-energize its power equipment in Clearbrush, where one of the deadly wildfires sparked in Los Angeles. Surveillance footage obtained by the law firm Edelson PC shows SCE's transmission lines may have sparked the deadly Eaton fire. The video was obtained from a gas station near the blaze. It shows arcing and sparks falling onto the dry hillside in a flash of light before it begins to burn within 10 minutes, going on to ravage the communities of Altadena and Pasadena.
That is the result of a surge in power because of arcing.
Lawyers explained their findings in a press conference Monday.
Sparked, that's what two different witnesses saw, hit combustible material at the base, and now you're seeing the location of the fire. So this video conclusively shows that this fire started up at the top of transmission pole number 3, fell to the ground, ignited grasses and the like.
The blaze has scorched over 14,000 acres, destroyed over 9,000 structures and damaged over 1,000 more, and killed 17 people. SCE on Monday said a preliminary analysis of data showed a momentary and expected increase in current on January 7th, the same day the fire began. Edelson has submitted a supplemental filing to prevent SCE from destroying any critical evidence. Taylor Tinsley, One America News.
Some Los Angeles residents who were forced to evacuate during the fires are finally allowed to go home. Here's Freddie Joyner.
Residents affected by the fast-moving Palisades fire in California sat in traffic almost a quarter-mile long on Tuesday after finally being allowed to return home for the first time in 3 weeks.
My understanding is that half of my condo complex is destroyed and the other half is still standing. So I'm anxious to see, what I can get out of there, and we're waiting to have the building inspected to see. I've heard it may have to be demolished, and it's devastating.
City officials granted access to destruction zones Tuesday morning, but only residents with proof of residency and required verification by law enforcement officers were allowed to drive into the affected areas.
I think we need to assess kind of the damage and to see it. Now we have a chance to sort of process what's happened. So, we have really no idea what we're going to kind of see.
I tried to get up yesterday, I couldn't. But look, we're looking forward to going up there. It's obviously been really, really hard. We want to see what's going on. And so, hopefully they get up there.
Since January 7th, California officials said the deadly Eaton and Palisades fires that have ravaged Los Angeles have come under greater control. The Palisades fire burned nearly 24,000 acres across the Santa Monica Mountains in the towns of Pacific Palisades and eastern Malibu.
Still to come on One America News Network, President Trump is cutting foreign aid except to Ukraine and Israel. How the White House is sneakily sending lethal aid to the country. And Colombia says it will allow the Trump administration to send its deported illegals. Why Colombian officials reverse course. Ahead. While speaking to Republicans at his Doral Golf Club, calling it a critical measure for enforcing law. Guatemalan officials confirmed the plane landed safely, bringing the total number of deportees under the program to 192. This comes after 2 Colombian Air Force planes carrying deportees from the U.S. land in Bogota. Here's more.
2 Colombian Air Force planes carrying deportees from the United States touched down in Bogota on Tuesday. It comes after Colombia and the U.S. pulled back from the brink of a trade war. U.S. President Donald Trump had threatened tariffs and sanctions on Colombia to punish it for earlier refusing to accept military flights carrying deportees. Colombia's President Gustavo Petro had objected to the use of U.S. military planes to deport Colombians, saying his country's citizens were being treated like criminals. Trump responded with a pledge to impose a 25% tariff, then a 50% tariff on all Colombian goods, as well as sanctions and visa restrictions on Colombian officials and citizens alike. Petro threatened his own tariffs. But late on Sunday, the White House said Colombia had agreed to accept the migrants after all to avoid the threatened penalties. According to the Colombian Foreign Ministry, a plane from California brought home 110 people. Another from Texas brought home 91. Trump officials cheered the deal as a victory and said Trump used Colombia as an example of U.S. power, while Colombian officials have said the agreement is a win for both sides.
Two Colombian Air Force planes carrying deportees from the U.S. land in Bogota. According to Colombia's Foreign Ministry Tuesday, one plane departing from San Diego carried 110 Colombians, while another from El Paso brought home 91. The flights come after President Gustavo Petro barred military planes from the United States from landing, objecting to their use in deportations. Trump responded with threats of tariffs, financial sanctions, and visa restrictions on Colombian citizens and officials. A Sunday night agreement resolved the standoff, allowing Colombia to send its own planes to bring the deportees home. Serbia's prime minister steps down from his post and amid a slew of scandals. Here's more.
Serbian Prime Minister Milos Vučević resigned on Tuesday following weeks of anti-corruption protests that have swept across the country. These demonstrations were triggered by the collapse of a railway station roof in the city Novi Sad, killing 15 people. What started as small protests in the area ballooned to widespread backlash, with people turning out in their thousands in capital Belgrade to blame the disaster on corruption within the government. Vučević told a press conference he and the mayor of Novi Sad would resign, meeting the demands of, quote, some of the most extreme protesters. This now former PM is the highest-ranking official to step down. Both the transport minister and the trade minister had already quit, but that failed to calm the public outrage. Vučević blamed foreign interference for stoking the protests without providing evidence. The focus for many analysts now is how much this will affect the president, Alexander Vučić. His party easily won a snap election in 2023, but, having also been accused of bribery and criminal ties, has come under increasing pressure.
Dana, Alexa, thanks for watching on this Tuesday night. House Democrats demand answers on the recent firings of DOJ officials. On Tuesday, Representatives Jamie Raskin and Jerry Connolly wrote a letter to acting AG James McHenry with several requests. The two Democrat lawmakers asked for the names of all fired or reassigned employees and the reasoning behind the decisions. They added, the firings contradict President Trump's promise to maintain a merit-based system of government. This comes following a president's purge of prosecutors who helped Biden weaponize the DOJ against his political enemies. And Judicial Watch files a FOIA request for information on the Biden administration's failed broadband for all effort. In a Tuesday announcement, the watchdog group filed the request to the Department of Commerce, demanding information and documents on the failed project. The project, signed into law in 2021, was supposed to provide internet connectivity all Americans, but was reportedly overburdened by arbitrary mandates like DEI. Judicial Watch founder Tom Fitton urged President Trump to cancel the program. The new White House press secretary holds the first official White House press briefing under the second Trump administration. Here's One America's Brianna Unatoa.
The second Trump administration holds their first White House press briefing. On Tuesday, the nation's youngest ever press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, addressed a number of issues and took questions from reporters. The first order of business was addressing the Trump administration's efforts to ramp up arrests of illegal migrants.
President Trump has sent a loud and clear message to the entire world. America will no longer tolerate illegal immigration. And this president expects that every nation on this planet will cooperate with the repatriation of their citizens.
Levitt confirmed the Trump administration is focused on deporting known criminals at this time.
He is focused on launching the largest mass deportation operation in American history of illegal criminals. And if you are an individual, a foreign national, who illegally enters the United States of America, you are, by definition, a criminal. And so therefore, you are subject to deportation.
ICE officials arrested more than 1,200 migrants over the weekend, including more than 500 with no prior criminal history besides entering the country illegally. Levitt also addressed the recent temporary pause on federal grants and loans to review how taxpayer dollars are being spent. She emphasized assistance to individual Americans will not be impacted, despite what the mainstream media is reporting.
This is not a blanket pause on federal assistance and grant programs from the Trump administration. Individual assistance, that includes, I'm not naming everything that's included, but just to give you a few examples, Social Security benefits, Medicare benefits, food stamps, welfare benefits, assistance that is going directly to individuals will not be impacted by this pause. And
the press secretary also shed light on the mysterious drones flying across New Jersey, which the last administration left unexplained.
The drones that were flying over New Jersey in large numbers were authorized to be flown by the FAA for research and various other reasons. Many of these drones were also hobbyists, recreational, and private individuals that enjoy flying drones. In time, it got worse due to curiosity. This was not the enemy.
Levitt announced 2 seats in the briefing room, usually reserved for White House staff, would now become new media seats. The official also noted the Trump administration will restore the press privileges of dozens of outlets, including around 440 journalists, which were revoked by the Biden administration. Rayana Unutoa, One America News.
Investigative journalist Matt Taibbi makes big predictions for greater government transparency amid President Trump's moves to disclose classified information. Here's more.
The sins of government may come to light with a new administration in the White House. That hopeful sentiment was expressed by renowned investigative journalist Matt Taibbi during a recent interview with Tucker Carlson. He pointed to executive orders signed by President Trump ending government censorship and declassifying closely guarded secrets as signs of hope. And he hopes those orders spark a new era of government transparency, which hasn't been seen in the U.S. since the 1975 Church Committee. That committee, chaired by late Idaho Senator Frank Church, exposed events like the CIA's MKUltra LSD experiments and assassination plots on Cuban leaders, as well as government infiltration of civil rights groups, among other abuses. And Taibbi hopes journalists and lawmakers push the government to reveal its dirty little secrets since 1975, including its involvement in blowing up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline and COVID-19 and their respective cover-ups.
There's a reason why Fauci's pardon is backdated to 2014, because that's the time period that they're going to have to start looking, which is, when did we start defying the ban on gain-of-function research? We clearly did. I think that's pretty established at this point. Why were we doing it? What connection did that have to the Wuhan thing? What kind of advance notice did we get? What kind of lies were told about it? Who were responsible for those lies? What information did we get about the inefficacy of the vaccine?
But what Taibbi really wants to know is who ran the White House over the past 4 years.
Of all the crimes that are on the table and the potential corruption issues, people signing documents or somehow getting documents signed by an incompetent president or an unfit president has to rank up there with the most serious things that have ever happened in American history, right? So you have to look at what was the process of the White House operation.
And we could get answers on these if the Trump administration continues going down the path of transparency. In one of his executive orders, Trump is giving his Director of National Intelligence carte blanche to investigate the intelligence community. Trump's pick for DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, is facing bipartisan efforts to derail her nomination, and Taibbi warns that's because Senators Masters fear Gabbard may expose things they don't want the public to know.
Well, they should be panicked, because if you read the executive order on the weaponization of government, it specifically empowers the Director of National Intelligence to conduct a wide-ranging report into the possible misdeeds of the entire intelligence community and orders her to come up with anything negative that they can find.
Taibbi predicts the public will see big revelations on shady government programs and actions over the next 4 years.
Kristi Noem delivers her first remarks as Homeland Security Secretary. Here's One America's Bailey Broadwater.
Kristi Noem challenges Department of Homeland Security employees to think ahead in her first official address as DHS Secretary. While addressing her new staff at DHS headquarters in Washington Tuesday, Noem pledged her support and commitment to the department to ensure safety and security for decades to come.
So just know that I am committed to fulfilling our mission with you and walking alongside all of you as you do your work every day to make sure that not only do you accomplish your job and do it with excellence, but that you have the assurance that your families will be safe also, and that we leave this country safe for our kids and our grandkids far into the future.
Noem also pledged her full support to carrying out President Trump's America First agenda, telling the audience she's so passionate about the job because she directly asked the president for the role. The former South Dakota governor's speech was brief but to the point and included multiple personal anecdotes about her family and how she got to the point she's at. One story included Noem's dad telling her he expects her to know what he needs before he needs it, which she says is the exact job of the DHS.
We prepare ahead and think 3 steps ahead so that people have what they need before they need it. I will challenge you to think ahead and to think what people might need before they actually need it, how we can pre-deploy resources, how we can be more efficient, and how we can be more nimble to respond to the situations that we find ourselves in.
Noem rounded out her speech by reminding the DHS she is here to not only lead them, but work alongside them in the pivotal point in American history. Bailey Broadwater, One America News.
Former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy starts his own public affairs and strategy firm. Tuesday, Watchtower Strategies announced its formation with McCarthy, Jeff Miller, Cliff Sims, and several others leading the firm. They boast their political connections, and Miller and Sims have close ties to the Trump White House and their experience working in top offices in D.C. Watchtower Strategy says they can be hired to help clients navigate the Trump administration's immigration, economic, and national security agendas. The Senate launches an investigation into China's influence in the Panama Canal, with Republicans saying Americans should be worried. Here's One America's Nathaniel Manner.
The Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee is investigating the impact that the Panama Canal is having on U.S. trade and national security. The panel met on Tuesday for a hearing, with Chairman Ted Cruz saying that he's concerned about China's influence over the canal.
This committee has jurisdiction under the Senate rules over the Panama Canal, and today we will examine evidence of potential violations. President Trump has highlighted 2 key issues. Number 1, the danger of China exploiting or blocking passage through the canal. And number 2, the exorbitant costs for transit.
This comes as President Donald Trump has repeatedly said that since the U.S. ceded the Panama Canal under Jimmy Carter's administration, China has attempted to gain more influence over the global shipping port.
Teddy Roosevelt became president, and he spent all of that money that was made from tariffs. The money was so enormous, and they built the thing called the Panama Canal. You might have read about this lately. It's become a hot subject because China essentially has taken it over, and we're not going to let that happen. We're not going to let that happen. It was the biggest investment to this day ever made by the country. In other words, if you bring it up to modern day numbers, we spent money that we've never spent anything so much.
The U.S. still wields exorbitant influence over Panama, spending $3.8 billion on foreign direct investment, making them the largest contributor to Panama's economy. However, Chinese firms like Landbridge Group and C.K. Hutchinson Holdings have developed a presence along both ends of the canal.
Since 2015, Chinese companies have increased their presence and influence throughout Panama. Panama became a member of the Belt and Roads Initiative and ended its diplomatic relations with Taiwan. Chinese companies have been able to pursue billions of dollars in development contracts in Panama, many of which were projects directly on or adjacent to the Panama Canal.
Trump hopes to push back against Chinese influence in the region by re-annexing the canal, saying it was one of the worst decisions in American history to give it away. While the Panamanian government has refused to give up the canal, he could have an ace up his sleeve to force their hand. Just as Trump used the threat of tariffs to send illegal aliens to Colombia, speculation looms that he could use similar tactics against Panama to take back the canal. Nathaniel Manor, One American News.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is preparing to defend his nomination as HHS Secretary to the Senate Finance Committee. One America's Katie Smith brought on the CEO of Clear to discuss.
Former independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is tapped to serve as head of the Health and Human Services for Trump's 2.0. He linked arms with President Trump when he suspended his campaign, knowing he could make real change in Trump's administration and make America healthy again. RFK Jr.'s confirmation hearing is here, and I have the CEO of Clear Inc., Nathan Jones, with me to discuss. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So you just released an op-ed in support of him being the HHS secretary. Why do you think this is a must for the Trump administration?
I think it's a must for the Trump administration, especially because one of the things that I think that America is failing at is keeping its citizens healthy. And our entire medical system is based on treating illness, not preventing illness. And RFK is somebody that I think has a lot of experience standing up to the government, to the bureaucracy, to the bureaucratic machine that overruns everything else. I mean, during COVID, you saw a lot of decisions that were very bad decisions that were made at the top that were pushed down, and nobody from inside would push back. And I think that we need to have people like that in the government.
Absolutely.
And I think Robert Kennedy is the one to do that.
Yeah, and we've already seen many of these government agencies kind of falling in line with the MAGA agenda, but we've also seen a little push for the Make America Healthy Again movement. And so you were talking about a little bit of the prevention. So I think with recent moves from the FDA, like banning Red 3, this was years in the making, and from people like RFK Jr. that are holding these agencies accountable. But you're more focused on hygiene. Tell me about that.
We are more focused on hygiene, but going back to the red dye number 3, that should have been taken out a decade ago. I mean, my children haven't had an issue with it, but I've had nieces and nephews that have had issues with it, and it should have been taken out years ago. But my company and what I do, we are focused on hygiene. We are more focused on oral hygiene and nasal hygiene, respiratory hygiene, making sure you're washing out your upper airway. Most of the time that people get sick, it's because you're either breathing in a pathogen or it's getting in your mouth. But I do believe that good oral hygiene, nasal hygiene, exercise, nutrition, and sanitation are the 4 pillars that make up a great public health policy. And I think that we have been ignoring that. Our public health agencies have really been ignoring that for at least 25 years that I've been in business, because I haven't seen them talking about hygiene or sanitation at all.
Yeah, and so as a father, what are you most excited about for this possible position for Kennedy?
I am hoping that my children grow up in a society where they are healthy. My children are fairly healthy, but that's because I cook food for them. We don't go out to eat a lot. We don't go out to fast food a lot. But the whole society around them is one of people that it's okay to not be healthy. And I think that's wrong, and I think that needs to be fixed. And I think that Robert Kennedy has been pushing in that direction, and I think that putting him in as Health and Human Services Secretary is going to allow that to even have more push as he moves forward with that.
Definitely more of an impact. And something interesting that you mentioned, it's your kids are healthy because of what you're doing. And I was just having a conversation with somebody about how we spend hours in the grocery store, and if you don't have a kid, you have the time to spend those hours and cook your own meals and do the research. But for somebody who is a stay-at-home mother or a father trying to get these healthy habits into their homes, it can take so much more time out of your day, and a lot of people would rather live in ignorance. I don't think it's for a lack of wanting to be healthy. I genuinely think that I see more of it being harder and harder to find those healthy options and those healthy swaps. So you're the CEO of Clear Inc., Nathan Jones. I want to thank you for joining us, but I also want to know where we can find you and your products and learn more about that hygiene as one of the pillars.
You can find our products anywhere. Find out more about us. It's just clearxlear.com. And we have lots of studies there backing up and showing you how hygiene is actually going to do a phenomenal job at keeping you healthy. And, you can find our products at all your pharmacies, your grocery stores, pretty much everywhere.
Amazing. Thanks again, Nathan.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Workers at a Whole Foods in Philadelphia pass a vote to unionize. Employees at the location voted to join. Voted to join the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, citing a need for higher wages and better working conditions. The union has also accused Whole Foods of running an aggressive anti-union campaign during the organization drive. This marks the first time Whole Foods, a store, voted to unionize since 2017. Now the union plans to negotiate a contract that reflects workers' priorities. All right, Oracle is partnering with SpaceX Starlink to provide high-speed satellite internet for its enterprise communications platform. The collab was announced Tuesday and will connect Oracle's cloud-based applications through Starlink satellites, allowing customers to connect in some of the world's most remote locations. The integration enhances real-time data sharing for healthcare, public utility, and other sectors. Oracle's cloud infrastructure will add advanced security features to protect users from disruption. Meanwhile, tech stocks, rally after NVIDIA recovers from their sharp declines Monday. Take a look.
U.S. stocks ended higher on Tuesday, with NVIDIA and other AI-related shares recovering from sharp losses a day earlier. The Dow gained about 0.3%, the S&P 500 added over 0.9, and the tech-heavy NASDAQ climbed more than 2%. AI chip leader NVIDIA rose nearly 9%, a day after its 17% drop erased over $590 billion from its market value in what was the biggest single-session loss for any company. The tech sell-off followed Chinese startup DeepSeek's launch of AI models it said were on par or better than industry-leading U.S. rivals at a fraction of the cost. Marianne Bartels is chief investment strategist at Sanctuary Wealth.
I think the market needed time to digest this information, understand this information. I think there was an overreaction yesterday. And now we're getting a really nice bounce. I don't see anything really that's negative for the markets based on the news yesterday. In fact, I'm even more invigorated that innovation, particularly artificial intelligence, also called AI, is really going to be the driver of this market.
Among other movers, Apple shares rose 3.7% ahead of the tech giant's quarterly results later this week. Shares of Royal Caribbean rallied 12% after the cruise operator forecast annual profit largely above expectations. And General Motors shares fell nearly 9% following its results and outlook, with investors weighing the threat of tariffs that could hit the automaker's business. The Federal Reserve kicked off its first policy meeting of the year on Tuesday, with the central bank expected to announce on Wednesday that it will keep interest rates unchanged.
HSBC is set to close down parts of its investment banking units throughout multiple countries. Here's Sierra Lee.
HSBC is preparing to wind down its M&A and equity capital markets businesses in Europe, the UK and the Americas. A memo sent to staff on Tuesday revealed part of a major shake-up of its investment banking operations. Europe's largest bank is working through a major cost-cutting exercise. The sweeping overhaul is aimed at streamlining costs, tightening focus and improving accountability of performance. But analysts have raised questions about the scale of savings that can be achieved and which parts of the business would be impacted. In the memo, CEO of HSBC Bank, Michael Roberts, said that the lender will retain more focused M&A and equity capital markets capabilities in Asia and the Middle East. Although it acknowledged how unsettling the news would be for HSBC bankers working in regions that advise on deal-making and corporate equity raising firms, such as through initial public offerings. HSBC shares were little changed after the news.
Boeing's annual loss soars to $11.83 billion, grounded by production woes and defense charges.
Boeing reported an annual loss of $11.83 billion on Tuesday, its largest since 2020. The plane maker has grappled with problems at its commercial and defense units and the fallout from a crippling strike by US West Coast factory workers. The loss demonstrates the challenges facing CEO Kelly Ortberg in turning around the firm, particularly as it cedes ground to rival Airbus in the delivery race and comes under the crosshairs of regulators and customers following a series of missteps. The company reported a quarterly cash burn of $4.1 billion, a metric closely watched by investors. That was slightly lower than analysts' expectations. Ortberg, who took to the helm of the plane maker in August, said the company was making progress in restoring stability to its struggling production lines. That's after a mid-air accident a year ago raised concerns about the safety of its jets. The company reported a loss of $3.86 billion in the fourth quarter due to what Ortberg called disappointing charges in several fixed-price defense programs. After banking record-high profits in the 2010s, Boeing has bled more than $30 billion since 2019. 2 fatal crashes of its best-selling 737 MAX jet triggered production quality and safety concerns, as well as worries that it misled regulators during the plane's certification process. While the mid-air panel blowout on a nearly new 737 MAX last January dragged Boeing into another crisis.
The NBA sets the dates for the 2025 draft in a ex-post Tuesday. The league confirmed the 2-day draft format would return this year. The 2-round format, first introduced during the 2024 draft, gives teams more time per pick during the second round, making it easier for viewers to track selections. The new format also gives teams and broadcast partners more time and gives the incoming players a bigger spotlight. Both events are expected to be held at Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York on June 25th and the 26th.